Yep, I'll be watching from backstage.
Ladies and gentlemen, please.
Hanımefendiler ve beyefendiler, lütfen yerinize oturabilir misiniz? Etkinliğimiz başlamak üzere. Teşekkür ediyoruz.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Hoş geldiniz. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back.
Hoş geldiniz.
Welcome back and welcome to Ankara and welcome back to the plenary stage of the NATO Summit Defence Industry Forum. We are also broadcasting live, so welcome to those of you who are joining us now online. I'm Maria Ramos. I'm a television news anchor for Turkey's international news channel, TRT World, and I'm also your Master of Ceremonies today. It's such a pleasure to be with you here today for the NATO Summit Defence Industry Forum. This morning, as so many of you heard, the NATO Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General made a series of important announcements. And they demonstrated how the alliance is uniting, innovating, and also delivering on production capacity and also on the capabilities that matter the most. And you can read all about these announcements on the NATO website and also, of course, in the press. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an amazing and very rich afternoon ahead for you today. And we have gathered here heads of state, ministers, CEOs from a very wide range of industries. And they will be sharing how NATO is working to deliver on its commitment to rapidly ramp up defense industrial production and innovation across the alliance. And before we begin, please, phones on silent. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the Minister of National Defense of Turkey, Yaşar Güler. Excellency, the stage is yours.
Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Secretary General, honorable ministers, distinguished commanders, esteemed representatives of the defense industry, and dear guests, I greet you all with utmost respect. It's a great pleasure to be with you on the occasion of NATO Defense Industry Forum today. Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, esteemed guests, at this forum held as part of the NATO summit, we are addressing one of the most critical areas that will shape the future deterrence and defense architecture of our alliance, our defense industrial capacity, our production power, and our innovative capabilities. The security environment we are facing today reminds us of a very clear fact. In order to protect their sovereignty, rights and interests, countries must have a strong state structure, effective diplomacy, deterrent military capacity, and a sustainable defense industry ecosystem. In this context, NATO's collective defense approach, solidarity, and the determination to act together are more important today than ever before. The production capacity, ammunition stocks, platform modernization, sustainable supply chains, and an effective defense industrial ecosystem to support that determination are equally vital. Indeed, the war in Ukraine has shown how decisive the pace of ammunition supply, unmanned systems, air and missile defense, electronic warfare, and rapid innovation are in modern warfare. Recent developments around the Strait of Hormuz have once again demonstrated that the security of lines of communication and supply chain management are now an integral part of defense planning. Therefore, the fundamental question for all of us is, how quickly can we turn our commitments into real capabilities? This is precisely one of the main objectives of the Ankara summit. Allies demonstrating the increase in their defense investments, meeting new capability targets, expanding production capacity, and building a stronger, more innovative, and more resilient transatlantic defense industrial base. With this mindset, Turkey has brought its domestic and national industrial production capacity and engineering infrastructure to a level that attracts attention globally. Today, we possess significant capabilities across a wide spectrum, from land, naval, and air platforms to unmanned systems, electronic warfare capabilities, and air defense solutions. Indeed, dozens of military vessels are being built simultaneously in our shipyards. Turkey has a level of naval platform production capacity which meets her own requirements and also contributes to allies and partners. Regarding the modernization of our land forces, the serial production phase of our Altay main battle tank is a concrete demonstration of the technological and industrial level we have reached in armored land systems. In the air domain, the Kaan program shows that Turkey has entered a new league in developing high-technology combat air platforms. Ammunition production is also one of the most critical issues for the alliance. We have rapidly increased our 155mm ammunition production capacity in recent years and became an ally delivering concrete results in this field. Through Roketsan's new production and integration investments, we are significantly expanding our missile and munitions production capacity. The investments of our companies such as Aselsan and Havelsan in radar, electronic warfare, communications, command and control, software, simulation, and artificial intelligence-enabled systems are advancing our defense industrial capacity both in scale and quality. Additionally, we also attach great importance to NATO's 5% defense investment pledge, because it is also a concrete expression of the alliance's will to strengthen deterrence, scale up defense production, and deliver the capabilities we need on the ground in a timely manner. Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, distinguished guests, the wars and conflicts have demonstrated that success on the battlefield depends both on existing stocks and the capacity to learn, produce, and adapt quickly. From drone technologies to electronic warfare, from ammunition production to software updates, the shorter the distance between the troops, engineers, entrepreneurs, and decision makers is, the greater the effectiveness on the battlefield becomes. Therefore, our task is to build this culture of cooperation in peacetime. Once a crisis emerges, it may be too late to establish production lines, build supply chains, or develop common standards. The preparation must begin today. Our call is clear. Let us turn commitments into capabilities. Let us turn resources into production. Let us turn industrial strength into deterrence. And let us strengthen the security of our alliance, not merely with words, but with concrete capacity that has real effect on the ground. In this context, we hope that the meetings and assessments of this forum will result in real projects, joint ventures, production arrangements, and capability outputs. With these thoughts in mind, I once again greet you all with the utmost respect and thank all participants of this magnificent event. Thank you.
Çok teşekkür ederim, Minister Yaşar Güler. Thank you very much indeed for your comments there. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we continue. Please join me now in giving a very warm welcome to the NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte. The stage is yours, Secretary General.
Thank you, Maria, Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, dear friends. Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the NATO Summit Defense Industry Forum. As we are in the middle of the World Cup, let me start with a little football analogy. And I do this with a heavy heart, as the Netherlands, my country, has been kicked out, and also Curaçao, which is part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, has been kicked out of the World Cup. But still, I maintain the football analogy. Because there is something I believe football teaches us. No team wins because of one brilliant player. We need a goalkeeper, you need the defenders, the midfielders, the strikers. And yes, everyone notices the player who scores the winning goal. But behind every successful player and team out on the pitch are many others on the bench and behind the scenes. The coaches, the trainers, the analysts, the people making sure everything works. Everyone matters, no one wins alone. NATO is much the same. It takes a whole team to deter and defend most effectively. Our political leaders set the direction. Our armed forces are on the pitch every single day. And you, our defense industry, provide the strength behind the team. The equipment, the innovation, the production capacity. To have power, resilience and endurance, we all need to be fully engaged in the game, working together for our shared security. You need us at NATO to tell you what our militaries need. That is the demand And we need you to turn those requirements into real capabilities. That is the supply. That is why that we continue to build cooperation between NATO and industry. I have seen it grow and develop since I took over in 2024. I visited factories and facilities across the alliance, including here in Turkey. I've spoken with company leaders, engineers and workers on the factory floor. I've seen the innovation. I've seen the opportunity. And I see our partnership in action right here at this forum. This is what teamwork looks like. And this is a team that knows how to score. Last year at the NATO summit in The Hague, allies made important commitments to invest 5% of GDP in defense, to accelerate production and to speed up innovation. 1 year later, we can already see the results. Last year alone, European allies and Canada spent nearly 20% more on defense than the year before. An extra $139 billion. Looking at 2025 and 2026 together, it is an increase, again, Canada and the Europeans, of $258 billion, more than 250 billion. And that's just the additional investment. So basically, one thing is clear. The money is there, and much more is coming. But this cash must be put to work. It needs to purchase capabilities to actually deter and defend. Governments and the defense industry are laying the path by investing in expanding defense production. Over the last year alone, we have seen $37 billion invested in just boosting our defense industrial base itself. Again, think about this number, 37 billion to boost our defense industrial base. So larger factories, new production lines, more capacity. In fact, there is enough additional production space to cover more than 2,000 football pitches. And just this morning at the forum, substantial new contracts were signed and more big announcements were made. Altogether worth tens of billions of dollars and growing. That means more air defense systems and strike capabilities, more satellite communications, more ammunition, more drones and counter-drone systems, and increased resilience and preparedness. According to our projections, by next year, the alliance will have the capacity to produce around 4 million artillery shells annually. Almost twice as many as last year. That's scale. So yes, we have made real progress. We are moving in the right direction. The strategy is clear. But the match is far from over. And to win it, we need all team members to pull their weight. Do more, faster, together. We don't have the luxury of time. We need capabilities now to ensure we remain ready. The security situation demands it. Russia. Russia is pouring almost half of its national budget into its war machine. Can you imagine? Almost 50% of what Russia spends is put into the war machine. Its defense industry is working around the clock. And not only the defense industry, also the rest of the industrial base in Russia is supporting the war effort. China continues to modernize its armed forces and expand its nuclear capabilities without transparency. North Korea continues to expand its nuclear program and supply Russia. And while recent US action has significantly degraded Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, we must remain vigilant. These countries are increasingly working together. And that should concern us all, because I assure you, they do not have our best interests in mind. So that's what we are up against. That's the reality we face. To meet the challenge, we need a transatlantic defense industrial revolution. The hum of machinery must become a roar. Now, that sounds dramatic, but it can be done. Governments have their role to play. They must continue placing long-term orders and signing contracts. Today is an excellent example of that kind of contracts we need to put on the table. More of that, please. We need a bonfire of red tape in our procurement and in our cross-border regulation. Both government and industry must continue investing in production capacity. Governments must also create the conditions for industry to expand and cooperate. Factories need reliable energy, electricity and fuel. They need secure supply chains. And above all, they need skilled people. Engineers, technicians, innovators. At the same time, industry across all of the nations represented here must be ready to take more risk. The demand is there and you know it. We are being much more open about what we need. At the summit, we are releasing publicly for the first time a consolidated demand signal outlining our requirements. We will help ensure you know the demand and understand it. And you also know the market is growing. Allies will continue to invest in defense. This is not an anomaly, this is a trend. Lastly, no single nation and no single industry can power an industrial revolution alone. But the good news is that we don't have to, because we have NATO. We combine the assets, the technologies and the industries of 32 countries across Europe and North America. That's incredibly powerful. We have an unequaled pool of talent, creativity and expertise out there. And many are right here in this room today. And we are even stronger when we work together with our partners. With Ukraine, of course, which continues to innovate at incredible speed. It now boasts an unparalleled drone ecosystem. And we are creating opportunities for more industrial cooperation and co-production with Ukraine. We must seize this opportunity. We are also building industrial cooperation with the European Union and countries in the Indo-Pacific. I've seen the Japanese defense minister and others here in this room today. Welcome. Because when we combine our efforts, we produce more, we innovate faster, and we strengthen all our security. So today, we are on the cusp of the transatlantic defense industrial revolution. I'm asking you to take a leap and show our people that we are ready and capable to protect them anywhere at any time. And show Russia and all those watching today that the transatlantic defense industrial base is mobilizing with purpose. Not in anger, but for our collective security. So let me finish where I started. Winning teams prepare. They train, they invest, they build trust, and they keep improving. That's exactly what we must continue to do. The partnership between NATO and industry is the winning one. So now, let's deliver even more, even faster, and together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we continue. Thank you so much, Secretary General Mark Rutte, and thank you for that analogy also with regards to football, very important. All right, for our next keynote, it's a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome to the stage the Vice President of Turkey, Cevdet Yilmaz. Excellency, the floor is yours. Welcome to you.
Distinguished Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Mark Rutte, distinguished Prime Minister of Czechia, distinguished ministers, distinguished representatives of the allied countries, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all and greet you all wholeheartedly and with respect. Welcome to Ankara. Welcome to NATO Summit Defense Industry Forum, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, 22 years ago, we hosted the NATO Summit in Istanbul back then. And today, we have been gathered together in the capital city of Ankara, which is considered to be the heart of the defense industry in Turkey. So we are absolutely delighted to have you in Ankara in this very important summit of our alliance. Ladies and gentlemen, as the alliance itself and allied countries, we have been up against some important global developments. We will have the chance to evaluate and assess all these developments in addition to the challenges and tests that we are up against. We are going to discuss those challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, in this forum today and in the Leaders Summit tomorrow, we are going to see that the alliance is taking a new step into NATO 3.0. So there will be fairer burden sharing in the alliance thanks to NATO 3.0. And the progress that we achieved shows us that in the face of the geopolitical challenges that we have today, we need to build a stronger European pillar in the alliance. And last year in The Hague, we took important decisions, including increasing the defense spending. And these commitments have been assumed duly by almost all of the allied countries. An approach to defense spending has been transformed on the side of all of the allied countries. And the test today is to turn the increased defense spending into concrete capabilities and to make sure that we create the industrial base in order to achieve our commitments. This is why we need to ramp up the production capacities in harmony with each other. In this respect, let me also quote the statement from Mr. Rutte. He always says that from Arkansas to Ankara. So let me repeat what he said. From Arkansas to Ankara, we need to work together. Under the strong leadership of His Excellency, President of the Republic of Turkey, we have been trying to understand the current threat landscape, and accordingly, we've been taking steps in order to progress and advance our defense industry in Turkey. Turkey is one of the defense exporters around the globe. We are ranking number 11 around the globe when it comes to the defense exporters, and hopefully we are going to rank one of the top 10 countries very soon. So hopefully, Turkey will be in the first league if we continue with the football analogy. Our defense industry has been going through some comprehensive transformation, and our production mix include air, land, maritime, cyber, and space areas. All of them are included in our portfolio. As a result of our extensive capabilities, the localization rate of the Turkish armed forces is more than 80% nowadays. And for the allied countries, Turkey is being a source of supply, reliable supply, and a source of reliable project making. And our defense investments expanded $11 billion. And our exportation, more than half of our exportation goes to the NATO allied countries and the European Union countries. And Turkey has been receiving lots of praise because of its UAVs and combat UAVs today, from electronic warfare to combat fighters, from fifth generation combat jet to strike capabilities. We have the state-of-art technologies, and we can develop state-of-art technologies in all of these areas. 5 of the top 100 defense countries around the globe come from Turkey. So this point that we've achieved in the area of defense industry is no coincidence. We've been progressing thanks to the collaboration between public sector and the industry in Turkey. And the industrial companies have been involved and engaged in this whole process from the beginning in Turkey. This is why we are successful today. Today, Mr. Secretary General has made lots of important announcements, and he also announced the widespread strategy of NATO towards the defense industry. This strategy is well adopted in Turkey. Resilience of defense industry is not only something to be dealt with by the governments and companies today. We need to collaborate with the universities, we need to collaborate with the finance sector and the workforce. All of the layers of the society need to be involved in this whole process, we believe. And this whole structure depends on human power, manpower. And the average age of the workforce in defense industry is 34 years in Turkey, and half of the engineers are young women in Turkey, which tells us something. It tells that we own the future thanks to the young workforce that we have in Turkey. One of the most important pillars of a strong defense industry is to have this skills pool required. This is why we are going to enhance and improve our skills pool and workforce. And we've been employing more than 100,000 skilled workforce. We are ramping up our investments, and we're also focusing on civilian industries as well, with all the technological innovations that we're focusing on. And this is how the defense industry is also contributing to economic development and social welfare. I was the welfare minister for long years, so I can say that defense industry contributes to both economic development and social welfare in general. Speaking from experience, I can say that. Similarly, artificial intelligence is what we have been focusing on, because technology has the game-changing capability. This is why we need to keep a close eye on the artificial intelligence. We've been focusing on research and development as an indispensable part of this whole innovative process. On the other hand, for the development of the defense industry, we attach great importance to international collaboration. And Turkey is not limiting its collaborative actions to exportation only. We are engaged in joint production, joint design and development processes with the allied countries. Last week, His Excellency, President of the Republic of Turkey, explained to the allied parliamentarians that we need to remove the barriers to collaboration in the area of defense industry, and trade restrictions in the area of defense between the allied countries should be lifted altogether. And if we want to increase the military readiness of the alliance, if you want to improve the collective defense in the alliance, then we need to overcome all these meaningless, senseless barriers and the sanctions. This is why all the bilateral restrictions between the allied countries should be lifted, and Turkey, which is contributing greatly to the European pillar of NATO, should be able to contribute to the defense and security initiatives in European Union and elsewhere. Otherwise, the progress in the development capacity will go down and the production cost will go up. So if you want to see a stronger, more resilient Euro-Atlantic system, then technological capabilities and operational experience should be there in a strategic architecture that we're all involved in. And Turkey is a strong, reliable country in this architecture, which is prepared to contribute greatly to the improvement of that architecture. Ladies and gentlemen, with this in mind, all the deliberations and discussions that we are going to hold under the forum and during the summit will hopefully be beneficial to the entirety of the alliance. Hopefully your contacts and meetings will pave the way for new collaborative actions. Ladies and gentlemen, the agreements, announcements, discussions that have been taking place since the morning will hopefully contribute to the increased deterrence and defense capabilities on the side of NATO, and will hopefully pave the way for stronger defense collaboration between the allied countries. With this in mind, let me welcome you all and greet you all wholeheartedly and with respect, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ankara and welcome to Turkey once again.
Çok teşekkür ederim Cevdet Yilmaz. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, if I may, speaking on behalf of all of us, how happy we are and grateful for Turkey's generosity and hospitality as hosts of this important event. Teşekkür ederim, Turkey. Thank you very much indeed for being such graceful hosts. Ladies and gentlemen, we move now to our panels, and we'll be starting with one entitled Navigating the Ramp-Up, a Conversation with Industry. And I think it's clear to everyone in this room that industrial might and military might go hand in hand. And our conversation this afternoon is just that, Navigating the Ramp-Up, a Conversation with Industry. Now, this features several private sector leaders who are working to ensure our militaries are getting what they need. And for this session, we're very happy to have our moderator, who will be Jenna Ben Yehuda, Executive Vice President at the Atlantic Council. And our panelists will be Uwe Horstmann, Chief Executive Officer at Stark Defense, plus Jay Pittman, President of Lockheed Martin International, and Charles Woodburn, Group Chief Executive Officer at BAE Systems. I now invite you all to join me here on stage. Welcome to you. Jenna, hi.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that kind introduction. We are gathered here in Ankara just 1 year after the alliance adopted a bold new defense commitment to increase defense spending in The Hague. What a year it's been. We're already seeing real strides, but we know that turning those new defense dollars, euros, and lira into real capabilities is easier said than done, and realizing this once-in-a-generation defense transformation really demands a whole-of-society approach that is led by governments working in lockstep with industry. We know that's not easy to do, and it's a challenge that institutions across the alliance are grappling with, including at the Atlantic Council through our ongoing task force on reimagining European defense and innovation. So in recognition of these shared challenges, and with an eye toward bold and innovative solution, it's really a privilege to moderate this panel, and I'm delighted to be joined here on stage by an esteemed group of military leaders. We have Uwe Horstmann, the founder and chief executive officer of Stark. Uwe has been a leading voice for investment in European sovereignty for the last 15 years. Jay Pittman, the president of Lockheed Martin International. Jay is responsible for driving strategies to provide mission capability to allies and oversees the company's business and markets outside of the United States. And Dr. Charles Woodburn, the Group Chief Executive Officer at BAE Systems. He's an experienced business leader with more than 28 years of experience in defense and aerospace and oil and gas industries. So we have tight time and about 3 days worth of content to get into, so I'm going to jump right in here. There's been a lot of discussion about industrial ramp-up, and we know that contracts are the obvious lever, but they're not the only one. And so as we look beyond contracting, what government or industry initiatives do you think have actually moved the needle on scaling up defense production? So what's working and what's missing? Uwe, let's start with you.
Of course, yeah. Thank you. I think that's exactly the right question, right? Because that is probably also what gets us from an abundance of money available, as the Secretary General just said. There's more to come. How do we translate that into actual capabilities? Because just price increases is probably not the right way. And I think we would always be well advised to look towards Ukraine and figure out what is the role model that we should look up to. And for me, that is really building an innovation ecosystem, getting that innovation ecosystem going. It's much more that than just this one single capability that we maybe hope for is going to solve all of our issues. So diving deeper into that, I think that's also where I look to when trying to answer your question. Two things. A, I think we need to continue on the path to design for mass production. When we have people come to our facilities, we had production experts there the other day, and they said, like, wow, this looks like a washing machine factory. And I'm not sure if they try to insult us, but actually we wear it as a badge of honor, because if you get your production for an unmanned mass-scale weapon system at the complexity of a washing machine, you're probably going in the right way. So I think we should continue with our procurement to not forget, but really strengthen that part of the industry. There's other parts, if I pick out a second one, where I think I would describe myself as a paranoid optimist. So I think we're moving in that direction, but we probably could always go faster. I think specifically in my part, in my component of the capabilities, again, unmanned, mass producible, software defined, we can still work a lot on certification. Certification itself, of course, is a massively important step for us. What do I mean by that? Concretely, I think we need more testing facilities, certification facilities in Europe. We can probably condense the procurement with the testing and the certification even further. And we probably should also look more into how certification in one country can also be absorbed by another country. So those are a few things where I would say we're following the blueprint of Ukraine, which is not one single wonder weapon, but the ecosystem organization is the wonder weapon, of course, combined with industrial production output. And if I think we follow that path, generally, that's the right way to go.
Charles, you mentioned that you're really feeling this change, and Uwe has pointed to some of those elements. What else are you seeing in your space that you feel like is really on the march?
Well, I was going to say specifically, one of the things that we have seen in the last 12 months is a much more active partnership between the traditional defense industries, such as ourselves, or Jays, and the sort of new entrants, the disruptors in the space. And I think that's benefited all of us. I mean, this whole idea that 80% can be good enough for a lot of what we do, and the fact that if we're going to fight a common fight and combine on common systems, open architectures, we're all being driven in the same direction. So I see in the last 12 months, I think quite a significant shift towards partnership between new entrants in defense and ourselves. And I think that's a really good thing going forward. I think to your point, great progress on partnerships generally. I mean, we have some good examples across Europe. I think often people criticize Europe as being quite fragmented, but we should also highlight where we do have really good partnership programs. You've got Eurofighter or RCV-90, for example, or Type 26 sail into Norway, where we're combining capabilities. I think as SecGen spoke earlier, the importance of a consolidated demand signal is incredibly important. But I think NATO have got a lot better at giving industry what they have. And I think finally, as a global player, and Jay would be in the same position, where we see countries within the alliance or indeed outside the alliance doing sort of best-in-class procurements, and I'll hand over to Jay to talk about the missile procurements, the ramp-ups in the US, they look genuinely best-in-class, the way those contracts are being structured. It's important that we explain that to our other global customers, because where we see good, it's important that everybody learns from that. And sometimes as a global defense company, that's a role that we can fulfill.
So Jay, I want to give you a chance to respond to that. And you're obviously representing an American company based overseas, looking at the global market. What has your experience been like of this shift in the last 18 months?
Yeah, first, obviously, we would like to be considered a global company, but understood fully. But no, Charles, thanks for the tee up. I think we've had lots of good discussion about this. We heard some of it this morning. When you have a better forecast of aggregated demand, you look at it in a multi-year situation, industry can show up differently. There's creative things we can do in terms of capital and financing and requirements to be able to drive through the supply base. As many know, the Department of War's acquisition transformation strategy and some of the things that have gone on within the United States has really done a generational shift in how we get at what they call framework agreements. I'm proud from Lockheed Martin. We were kind of the first to the party in terms of being able to go sign and document out one of those framework agreements, now multiple framework agreements. And what it's doing is we're not talking just normal stair-step increases in things like munitions. In some cases, we're quadrupling production lines. And it's not just borne on the expense of the US government and trying to facilitate us. It allows industry, it allows supply chain to go off and invest differently, think differently of how we show up. So from a Lockheed Martin perspective, it's allowed us over a few-year period to invest about $9 billion in terms of capital and infrastructure and site expansion, additional sites, et cetera. But as Charles was saying just a moment ago, I hope that lends as a message that if we can do what the Secretary General was saying earlier, where we can have consistent requirements, consolidated quantities of needs and aggregated demand, we can do this all holistically across the world stage. There's no reason we can't do that across NATO.
So you really see that as key to unlocking the scale that we're talking about?
I do, because I think today, unfortunately, we end up having multiple channels of effort that sometimes occur. We might have efforts in the United States, we might have efforts across Europe, we might have efforts across NATO, we have efforts beyond, obviously, those countries and regions on the world stage. If we can have more aggregation of that and work with companies such as all of us on the panel, and make sure that we're attacking the requirement space in a way that we can show up with a solution versus a prescribed in a box, then sometimes we can come up with some very, very creative solutions. And in this case, this is how we're getting at quadrupling demand.
So I want to come back to you, Uwe, on capital shifts that you're seeing and these shifting requirements question. But first, Charles, I want to come back to you. What's missing from this? We've seen kind of a call for consolidated requirements, things that help you do more faster. What else is on that list?
Well, it's not like one thing, it's just pace generally. And I think as the Secretary General said, translating it from a hum to a roar, it's the acceleration of many of the initiatives. I'm not sitting here thinking there's something key missing. We just need it more pace. I mean, in industry, we're investing at record levels, CapEx, self-funded R&D. Industry will happily do that when we see the clear, and there's a clear business case ahead of us. So the more we can do to consolidate that and build the business case, the quicker we can move. And for a company such as ours, we have no shortage of capital to deploy, and we're ready to do that when we see the business case, as we have been doing. So I think pace, it's not that pace is missing, but we can always do with more pace.
So that shared commitment for velocity.
Indeed.
I want to come back to you on capital. We hear a lot about this need to deepen an innovation ecosystem across Europe in particular. Lack of capital is sometimes cited. What shifts have you seen afoot? Is that really still the question worth asking?
I think so. I mean, it's been a super interesting journey over the past, I want to say, 5 to 10 years. And it is also a big part of my biography. And trust me, that's not a part that I chose to be kind of like really deep in the trenches of capital allocation into the defense industry in Europe. Specifically when it comes, of course, to call it my part of the industry, which is the systems are more inexpensive, they're faster to develop, and they're designed for scaling and producing. There you can basically, with the right information, I don't need any R&D money. I can pre-fund that innovation entirely. And in that space, I think we definitely see a lot of change. We see, when we talk about capital, the human capital really stepping up, which is an interesting aspect, I think, in all of this. Like a young generation deciding, yeah, this is a generational challenge for us. We want to play a part in this. And that's a very important part. But of course, there's the actual capital to how that will get financed. I would say Europe has been slower than it should have in terms of really embracing investments into the defense industry, always under the right regulatory framework, with the right ethical boundaries and so on and so forth. That's a non-negotiable. It has been slow to embrace that. Not so much slow in recognizing the problem, but just slow in enacting the changes necessary. Because for me, 2 years, and that's maybe 2 to 3 years, is a bit of a description for a time frame where it really started to happen and now it's really in full swing. That's a long time. And, I'll be the first to proudly state this. American investors, of course, have stepped up in that time as well, which we are thankful for. And that only led to the situation that now a company like ours is possible, where we'll, in that 2 years that we are around, take the next 2 years, into that, we'll probably spend $1 billion on research and development and production expansion. And that is money that was not there really before. So we see a different part of the economy kind of stepping up, going into. And we have developed, I think, from early stage venture funding to growth stage investors to now really tapping into the very large pools of capital. So now we have investors who have 50 billion, 100 billion available. So you see it is an interesting investment theme. And that is good that way because, of course, we need to bring it all together. The technological innovation, the procurement processes, which, of course, for us, also a big unlock to attracting capital. The human capital. I think sometimes we underestimate how important it is, what power we have as industry. If you can make it clear to the people out there that it is okay to work in defense, it is okay if you're an engineering talent to think about how to defend your home country and the alliance. And, of course, the actual capital, which is also needed. And which also, to a certain degree, at least in my part of the whole stack of military systems, can replace taxpayers' money, but can really replace also the R&D funding.
So Jay, I want to turn to you. You're at a different part of the spectrum within the space. You're a larger, established company, one of these major primes that we're often talking about. This push for velocity, this push for rapid fulfillment, of really delivering quickly. How have you experienced those shifts, and how are you approaching some of that need to be able to respond to those requirements and reduce that time to decision?
Yeah, I first start by saying, I hope everybody still thinks of Lockheed Martin as an incredibly innovative and forward-leaning company. We have things like our Skunk Works organization in Palmdale that have, for generations, established some of the cream of the crop of advanced technologies and capabilities. So the way that I look at it is, this is a great opportunity, just like this panel, for all of us to work collaboratively across the industry. There's requirements that we're all attacking that we need to get at faster than ever before. So how do we leverage the best expertise of all of us on the world stage across NATO to be able to get at these problems? So from our side, I think it continues to be more opportunities to partner, more opportunities to collaborate together. We invest heavily in venture, our own LM Ventures, in terms of investing in emerging capabilities and technology.
Has that accelerated those
has.
Kinds of partnerships
It has.
recently?
We've not only accelerated in the amount of companies we're dealing with, but also the funds that we're putting into those companies as well, for the pure reason of where can we do this 1 + 1 = 3 opportunity in terms of being able to accelerate with velocity some of the development. So we are not too proud to say that it doesn't have to be invented here from a Lockheed Martin standpoint. How do we get at it from, I think, that speed and velocity? So I think it shows up in all life cycle phases, though. I think we often think of like velocity in terms of development. To me, it's velocity in terms of everything. It's velocity in terms of development for all the reasons we just said. It's velocity in terms of production. How do we move up ramps faster? How do we think of new creative ways and everything under the sun to get at production differently, including how do we attack requirements? But then even the life cycle.
Yeah.
Part of the challenge for an organization, I'm sure Charles has the same challenge, when you have platforms deployed everywhere around the world in vast quantities, how do you make sure that we are, again, also moving with velocity in terms of the sustainment, regional sustainment? How do we use artificial intelligence to get at the pure mastery of data that we have quite a substantial amount of in the type of work that we do? So we're attacking it on all fronts.
So Charles, I do want to come to you on this point of velocity and how you reshape a business to think about executing on different timetables. I'd love to hear about your experience leading BAE through a moment like this, and also how has Russia's war in Ukraine shaped some of your thinking and the examples of their bravery?
Yeah. It's been a pretty profound change. The drone, counter-drone that we see play out day in, day out in Ukraine is something that we've all learned some profound lessons from. Defense of existing platforms, defense of your land, integrated air and missile defense. The combination of swarming drones and high and ballistic missile threats is an incredibly difficult challenge to face.
And we will probably also, all of us, have to do a better job at delivering on that. And specifically on the data sets. We should really ideally thrive for a situation where we have very high walls. We really vet everybody very carefully. But once you make it in, you probably should have access to a lot of data. I don't sometimes understand why we don't treat breast cancer, for example, where we have great radiology data sets, and we give them basically to everybody whom we trust, help us better make better diagnoses. Maybe enemy tanks, we should treat them more like breast cancer and also give access to people who can train their models on it, because that way, if you're a trusted partner of the ecosystem, we give you access to better data, and hopefully for all of us, we'll get a better solution out of it.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about the changing investment climate in Europe. It feels like you're doing more, working together, new partnerships. We've also seen some demand signals, I think, for the decision makers in the room, a real desire maybe for forcing some decisions on interoperability, making some of that a requirement, longer tail orders, more predictability in the space, ability to scale that production. Anything else? What are we missing? What are the buzzwords that everybody in this room and online needs to be thinking about throughout this industry forum?
I've got to come back to collective pace. Yes. For all of us. I mean, we recognize the challenge. We see what our adversaries are doing. And collectively, we just need more pace in this. And we're ready to play our part, I think, in industry. But collectively, with everyone in this room, we just need more pace.
I would pile on Charles's word by saying again, collectively though, how do we make sure across the entire NATO supply base, do we make sure we're operating with strength and full access for the entire supply base?
So this is not just spend more, but spend well, spend smart, do it fast, and build together.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all the time we have.
Thank you so much to Jenna and her panelists. Another round of applause. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, now to moderate a very important conversation on the capability challenge, a NATO-EU conversation. I'm very pleased to welcome Ambassador Tajan Ildem, who is the chairman of the Center for Economics and Foreign Policy Studies, EDAM, which is an Istanbul-based independent think tank. Ambassador, welcome to you. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you. And I'm also very pleased to welcome, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the President of the European Commission to the stage, Ursula von der Leyen. Welcome. And a very warm welcome back to the stage, the NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte.
Well, we are at a very important segment of this gathering, and I have witnessed your excitement, Mr. Secretary General, during the signing ceremonies, and also when you were announcing some of the initiatives on the part of NATO in engaging with industries. It is now your time as two leaders of both NATO and the European Union to have a conversation, and it was gratifying for me to see both leaders co-authoring an article for The Economist, enumerating some of the ideas that you share. And in the article, one thing that struck me was that you argue that Europe's era to outsource much of its defense is over, and that deterrence is no longer with military capabilities, but also having our industries to produce more in a very speedy fashion and in a better way. So we still consider, of course, capabilities as something important. Nevertheless, you may perhaps both discuss a bit on the industrial capacity, innovation become so important for all of us, both NATO and the European Union.
Thank you so much for having us here. This is a great opportunity indeed to show how closely we are working together, the European Union and NATO. Actually, I was just thinking today, one of the reasons is, my dear friend Mark, because we have both experiences on both sides. You were for 14 or 16 years, 14 years Prime Minister, so he was in the European Council. And I was for 5 years Defense Minister, so I was sitting in NATO. Now it's the other way around, and therefore we know both how important a close cooperation between the European Union and NATO is. Second, I just listened to the panel before us, and it's very clear, all member states of the European Union and allies have one single set of forces. So they assign this single set of forces either to NATO missions or to EU missions, UN missions, or coalition of the willing. But to make this possible, what we need is interoperability. And of course, in this geostrategic and geopolitical environment, we need a massive surge in defense investment. And here, the European Union is indeed massively stepping up. We have our Rearm Europe program, which mobilizes up to 800 billion euros till 2030. In this program is SAFE, 150 billion euros for joint procurement. And not to forget, the next long-term budget will have 131 billion euros for military capabilities, plus 17 billion euros for military mobility, which is also of utmost importance: streets, bridges, ports, airports, etc. The infrastructure also has to be here on the European side. And on SAFE is for us very important, as I said, the joint procurement. Here we have good news. We have now 10 agreements worth 100 billion euros. SAFE is per design open also to partners and other countries. 35% of the cost components can go outside the European Union, but of course 65% have to be in the European Union, and that's the point how we strengthen the defense industrial base, because with this taxpayers' money we want, of course, a return on investment, and we want good jobs in Europe, we want research and development in Europe, so that's important for us. My last sentence on this: the door is more open than the 35% for countries outside the European Union. If there is a security and defense agreement signed, Canada is the first one to have done this, so these possibilities are also there. So you see a wide spectrum of investment.
Yes. Well, Secretary General, if you can also share your perspectives.
Well, basically, I totally agree. The great thing is we know each other so long, and of course, there is a clear division of labor we both agree on. So that's why we can strengthen each other's roles. So NATO is about command and control, capabilities, and standards. Basically, all the other things have to be handled by Europe. And the EU, of course, is crucial. 3 of NATO allies are also in the European Union. So most of the NATO allies are also a member of the European Union. And when you look at issues like, indeed, making sure the money is there, the 800 billion, crucial program. But also when it comes to, indeed, military mobility, when it comes to societal resilience, when it comes to developing the defense industrial base. This is all what Europe, the EU, is working on. You appointed Andrius Kubilius, the first defense commissioner, I think in the history of the European Commission. He is working on that with a specific focus under your leadership, and I think that's all evidence. And we've got to do this because the threat is there. We cannot continue as we did, being over-reliant on the United States. We need this much stronger Europe in a stronger NATO. And we can only get there when we work together seamlessly as one, using and leveraging each other's strength. And that's what we are doing.
Well, we all know that it is important for Europeans to strengthen their strategic responsibility. I rather prefer using strategic responsibility rather than autonomy in order to have the transatlantic bonds as strong as ever. While doing so, of course, NATO is most appreciative of the initiatives taken by the European Union. You mentioned SAFE, of course, there are many others, European Defence Fund, PESCO, EDIRPA, REARM, and of course, in creating capabilities, translating cash to capabilities, the European Union needs to look not only to the capabilities of the member states, and Europe is more than the European Union. And I would like to ask to you, President Ursula von der Leyen, since the audience here is also including Turkish participants, how you see the involvement of non-EU allies. You mentioned Canada, but there are others, including Turkey, a way forward to properly involve Turkey in such projects. If you can touch upon it, I'm sure they will be quite receptive.
Yes. Turkey is one of the largest armed forces within NATO, of very big importance, and has always played an important role in the alliance, but also, of course, in our relationship with the European Union. And as I said, if you only look at SAFE, which are the 150 billion euros, 35%, that's a lot, is open to work, for example, together with Turkey. But the 800 billion up to 2030 is the decision of the member states how to invest their defense allocation in order to fill the gaps. So there's a wide opportunity to have a very close cooperation with each other. For us, it's very important to be totally aligned with the NATO targets because, as I said, the one single set of forces, we know where the gaps are, and we have to work very closely together. So, for example, the NDPP, the NATO defense planning process, is for us very important so that we fill the gaps in a cost-efficient manner. But I want to add another point. We also want to work very closely with Ukraine. The panel before us described the phenomenal, innovative power that Ukraine has. And this we have to use because we have to step up in our defense capabilities fast, at a reasonable cost, and smart. And Ukraine has proven all this in the last years under the pressure of the war. This is the reason why the European Union, for the first time, opened an innovation office in Kyiv to have the direct contact with the Kyiv industrial base. Secondly, we are encouraging our companies to go into joint venture with Ukrainian companies. And thirdly, we as a European Union are working on a longer-term partnership in order to look how to boost our cutting-edge technology base in our defense industrial base in the European Union together with Ukraine. We can learn a lot from Ukraine, and we have to learn a lot because they are not only highly innovative, but also battlefield experienced. So this whole picture shows how much we are stepping up here together with NATO because we share the same interests and we share the same values and we know what's up.
Secretary General, you in your remarks told that the priority for Ankara summit would be also to have a proper follow-up of the Hague summit meeting with the decisions taken there. Of course, when European allies elevate their contributions in burden sharing, it should not translate itself to decoupling. Transatlantic bond to maintain it is of vital importance. But talking about the defense industrial capacity, there are few earlier initiatives like Diana Innovation Fund, but you also today touched upon some new ones. What would be the priorities for NATO in years ahead to focus and deliver, and what industrial community could expect and what you expect from them?
Basically, the priority is for our defense industrial base in Europe, in Canada, in the US to produce more. We are making progress. It's really getting much better. You see in Europe, more production lines, more factories being opened. I mentioned in my short speech the ammunition, which is really, when it comes to the output, it's a huge increase in production. But we need this across the defense industrial base, again, in Europe, Canada, and in the US. Because Russia has the whole of its economy now on a war footing. So the car industry in Russia is producing for the war effort. And that means that we've got to do this also in Europe, Canada, and the US. And what we are seeing at the moment is a transformation which is unparalleled since the end of the Cold War, where Europe is taking so much more responsibility for the conventional defense of NATO, of this part of NATO territory, with still a strong US presence also going forward, both nuclear and conventional. But it is a NATO transformed, where the US has a strong partner in Europe, much stronger than it was only 4 or 5 years ago. Therefore, the whole of NATO is stronger. As the German defense minister said the other day, to stay transatlantic, we have to become more European. And that's exactly what is happening. And you see some of the key leadership roles in NATO now being taken over by Europeans. You see the Europeans taking the lead on Ukraine and the support for Ukraine, with still crucial supply from the US, but paid for by European and Canadian allies. We see it again with some of the commands in NATO taking over by Europeans. We see the forward land forces more and more Europeanized. We're still US presence, and also the 3 centuries, Baltic, Arctic, and Eastern, very much European dominated. This is what we need. So this cooperation between NATO, European Union, is leading to a transformation which, again, is unparalleled. And we need it because in the end, it makes us stronger.
Well, there is a geopolitical transformation in general with its rupture, unfortunate rupture, and certainly it is necessary to also have a transformation of mindset. And it requires perhaps, as many have touched upon already, not to see governments as the only stakeholder, but it should be a combination of contributions from others, including industry. So we used to talk more about whole of government approach. Perhaps on resilience, you may talk a bit about a whole of society approach. Perhaps we may start with you.
Yeah, the whole of society approach is very important because we do not only see the conventional or let's say the military threat out there, but the whole hybrid attacks that we are suffering from are targeting towards the society. For example, if you take foreign interference and manipulation of information, internet-based, this is a big issue which is targeting the society's vulnerability and where you have to build resilience. And this is something which we are working intensively on too, to set the record straight, to convince with facts and figures, to be clear in all these debates, internet-based, what the truth is and what the right facts and figures are. And you can win these battles. We've seen this in different scenarios that you can really convince people. If you look at the Eurobarometer, measuring opinions of people, they say very clearly that one of their top worries is security and resilience. So the Europeans have understood how important it is to defend our democracy, to defend our values, to stand up for freedom and for peace. So this approach of whole of society is the precondition to be successful.
Secretary
I completely agree. And let me just give one example, Turkey, how you have organized your defense industry with the Turkish Defense Industry Secretariat directly reporting into the President. You have about 3,000 defense industrial companies working closely together, small, medium-sized, the bigger ones, basically exporting all over NATO territory and, of course, producing for Turkey itself and also exporting outside NATO. I think that's a model which is very interesting, and I know that some other allies are studying it to see whether they could implement it in their country. So it's just one example of a whole society approach when it comes to defense industry. And more generally, it is indeed, as Ursula is saying, it is the realization Europeans have that the first task of government is to keep our country safe. The second task is to have a strong economy. And you need both to deter the Russians. We need strong economies, healthy finances, connected to strong economies. But first of all, we have to defend ourselves. It's the first task of every government. And the threat is there. Russia working with North Korea, Iran and China. Let's not be naive.
So this forum, in fact, is a showcase of this interaction, strong interaction between governments and industry. I see the clock. It seems that we have come to the end of this important conversation. And once again, thank you for sharing your views. And it's always a pleasure to see both of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and thank you so much to our guest, Secretary General Mark Rutte, and also President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, please, we have another very important guest here today with us. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to the stage the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Welcome, President Zelensky. Best. I think the podium is yours now. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi. Dear friends, Mark, dear Ursula, Alex, Rob, I don't see everybody, sorry. Dear friends, so thank you for your attention to us. Thank you for your attention to Ukraine, to Ukrainian defense companies, and to our defense capabilities, which have truly become among the strongest in Europe and have been proven in modern war. And what do we mean by modern war today? War has changed fundamentally. These are revolutionary changes in the very nature of warfare, changes as serious as those during the First World War, when machine guns began to decide the outcome of battles, or with the development of modern tank warfare, which had such a profound impact on Europe during the Second World War, or with the invention of missiles. Today, drones and the very technology of fighting at a distance represent a revolutionary change in the technology of war. So in Ukraine, as we defend our positions on the front line and do so in a fully justified war of self-defense, we are now eliminating around 30,000 Russian soldiers every month. Just imagine that scale. In June alone, nearly 28,000 Russian soldiers were eliminated, and we have video confirmation for every single one of them. The overwhelming majority were struck by drones. And frankly, we take no pride in this. We are saying it to show what modern war looks like, a war we did not start, but one we are forced to fight in order to defend our country, our people, our children. Every day, this war also sees a massive amount of enemy equipment, logistics, and military facilities destroyed. And again, we do most of it with drones. At the same time, we are carrying out a campaign to secure the Black Sea using our naval drones. These are not just strike platforms used to destroy Russian warships at sea. Our naval drones have already evolved into multi-purpose platforms that can launch strikes from the sea against different targets on land and in the air. At the same time, we are fighting in the skies on two key fronts: defending Ukraine from Russian attacks and carrying out our long-range sanctions against Russia for this war, along with our medium-range pressure campaign across the entire depth of the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Thanks above all to our drones, we have established the ability to strike across the entire depth of the occupied territory. And you see what Russia's massive attacks look like. They are very similar to what we recently saw in the neighboring region when Iranian forces struck their neighbors. Attack drones of different types, missiles, and a large number of ballistic missiles. We have raised our interception rate against Russian Shahed drones to more than 90%. That means thousands of Russian attack drones shut down every week, and with all due respect, no other country had the capability to defend against attack drones at this scale. The reality of this war forced us to build it. And today we defend against hundreds of attack drones every day and night, and thousands every week and every month. Ukraine's defense sector is building that capability even in the middle of a full-scale war. And we also maintain a high interception rate against cruise missiles, thanks to the way we have built our air defense. And thanks, of course, thanks to the support of all of our partners who continue to provide Ukraine with defense assistance. Thank you so much. And I have a question for you. Do you really believe it? Do you really believe it would be right to live outside NATO, a country and a people with this level of defensive capability? If we already have these capabilities, if Ukrainians already know how to fight like this, then it does make sense for these capabilities to become a part of the alliance's collective defense. That would make all of us stronger. And we already see each other as reliable partners, and it would be only natural to become a part of one common security community. The fact is that we will remain next to the source of the problem, Russia, for a long time. Ukraine in NATO is a source of extraordinary defensive capability. Refinery in Siberia. And this is not an exception. It's the new reality. And there is no major oil refinery left in Russia that has not been struck by Ukraine. I want to emphasize this. Unlike Putin, we are not fighting this war for pleasure or for geopolitics. Russia brought this war to Ukraine, and it's killing our people. It wants to destroy our independence, and we are only defending. From the first day of this war, we are defending ourselves, and we are raising the cost of this war for Russia, and by doing so, increasing the changes for peace. We are able to do these things thanks to the hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians working in our very important defense sector, and the hundreds of companies producing every type of modern weapon Ukraine needs. Today, because of this, Ukraine has the world's largest and the most advanced drone warfare capability. And we are offering this capability to our partners through the Drone Deal Initiative. I'm grateful to everyone who has already joined this initiative and to those who are joining it. Drone Deal Initiative, it's not only about buying drones, but also about co-production, fast-track access to the means of protection of critical infrastructure, air defense, and of course, security cooperation. And I also want to thank every leader, every country, and every company cooperating with Ukraine in the defense sector. The European Union, Turkey, NATO countries, as well as countries such as Azerbaijan and the Gulf states and other friends are already our strong partners. And I hope our cooperation will provide our nations with reliable protection against threats. The one thing we still need to do here in Europe is build a strong defense against Russia's ballistic missiles. This is a big challenge, it's true. This is Russia's last major advantage. And as well, and as we have seen from the wars in the Middle East and the Gulf, this is an issue of global importance. And I believe Europe urgently needs its own capability to produce anti-ballistic systems and the missiles they require. We all value the Patriot system. It's an excellent system, and there are others as well, but today's wars have shown that current Patriot production is not enough to meet the growing demand for protection against ballistic missiles. That is a fact. And we must respond to that fact. Those who defend life need more Patriots. We have also discussed Patriot production licenses with our American partners, and I ask you to support our efforts to make this happen. And one final point. As I said, Europe needs its own effective anti-ballistic systems and missiles. And this work is already underway. And I urge all of you and all our partners to give it the attention it deserves. And this cannot wait until 2030 or beyond. Europe needs affordable, mass-produced anti-ballistic systems as soon as possible. In fact, today. And I'm sure you agree with me, this is not about maximizing profits for governments or for industry, and it's about providing the strongest possible protection, first of all, protections for hundreds of millions of Europeans. And that protection is needed today, not years from now. We work on developing the anti-ballistic coalition, and I hope it will deliver real, strong results. While this war continues, please help us get more air defense missiles. This is our top priority right now. We are capable of doing everything else ourselves. But when it comes to air defense, we need our partners' determination. Please, let more determination and more decisions for air defense be one of the key outcomes of this NATO summit in Ankara. And I encourage all of you and all our NATO partners to work closely with us, with Ukraine, to develop modern defense capabilities and protection against every type of drone threat. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who is helping us, helping protect lives. And I cannot finish without my appreciation of the position of the leaders of the countries who have clearly stated Ukraine belongs in NATO because NATO with Ukraine is the alliance for the future. The alliance of today must be up to the challenges of the modern world. With Ukraine, with the strength of our defense industry, and most importantly, the resilience and experience of our people. And I'm proud of our people, and I'm proud of Ukraine. Thanks, friends, again for invitation. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, a very big round of applause for the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Thank you very much indeed, President Zelensky, for your powerful speech and speaking to us here in Ankara today. Ladies and gentlemen, we will prepare now for our next session. And in today's world, defense, industrial preparedness, that depends on a range of factors. And not every lever rests in the hands of military decision makers. Our next panel is entitled People, Plans and Products, a Whole of Society Approach to Industrial Preparedness. And this will give us a sense of this complexity and how different institutions have a role to play and play their part. And for that, I'm very pleased to announce our next moderator, and that will be Anton Laguardia, who is the diplomatic editor for The Economist, and he'll be joined by the